Welcome to another Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 16. You ready? Those fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
Those fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started, let me just tell you what you're going to expect in this video. I'm going to give you the rankings, and then we're going to look at some stats to see if you agree or disagree with these rankings, and maybe this can help you with your own lineups. Now, one thing I want to point out is that we don't have, hold on. All right, the one thing that I want to point out is we normally have Richard. We don't have Richard in this week's video, but we're going to continue without him. But before we get started, I always like to review last week's rankings to see how they looked. So let's just go ahead and get started. All right, this is last week's rankings. And the one thing I want to point out is, usually on the top 5 is the same. So what I want to check out is how many of those were injured. So we don't see any injured. Now we want to see who out of the top 30 made it last week. All right. It was not a good week. You have people like Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins did not make the top 10, and it only continued to get worse as Chris Olave, Mike Williams, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy. Let's look at what he did. He was ranked that was for that week. He was ranked 34th, but going back to, that's what happens when, I always like to, that's what happens when those fantasy. That's what happens. Some of these rankings, you see it play out. Not everybody makes it. It was a bad week. A lot of people didn't make it. So as we move into these rankings, I just want to let you know that, more than likely, we're going to have the same situation that a lot of these wide receivers won't make it. So what we're trying to do is figure out which wide receivers are not going to make the list. That's huge. All right. So don't forget, this is a live video. So if you have some questions, go ahead and put it in the comment sections. We'll try to show or highlight the people that you have questions to. So let's get started on this week. Coming in at number 1, who do you know? Justin Jefferson versus the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants have something to play with. And if you look at last week, Justin Jefferson continues to have an outstanding season. He had 12 receptions on 16 targets. He had 1 touchdown and 123 yards. He was the 3rd ranked wide receiver. I have no problem seeing him in the top 5. Number 2, Tyreek Hill, home versus Green Bay. Now, that Miami offense has struggled. In my mind, they've struggled. They haven't been winning, so that kind of creates a little bit more frustration with the offense. But last week, Tyreek Hill had a touchdown, had 69 yards. But before we kind of move past him, he's kind of trending down in a little bit last couple weeks for touchdowns. He doesn't really get into the end zone all that much. So realistically, Tyreek Hill, you're hoping for a lot of yards that really puts him over the top. Hopefully with the Giants, he can do that. At number 3, you have Stephon Diggs at Chicago. Now, Stephon Diggs did not make the top 30 last week. He only had 16 receiving yards. And that whole offense, even though that offense won that game, they didn't get a lot of points. So here you go. Stephon Diggs had 60 yards. He had 1. He didn't have a touchdown. And this is what his points look like, kind of trending down the last 2 weeks as well. So you're hoping that he bounces back. But it's Stephon Diggs. You have to put him there. At number 4, Davante Adams at Pittsburgh. Davante Adams, that whole team, they keep on going to Josh Jacobs. That's what Richard used to say all season, is that they're just giving it to Josh Jacobs way too many times. You have 22 attempts They're not giving it to their stud receiver, Devontae Adams. Even Keelan Cole had a better game than Devontae Adams, but we like what he's done all year. He's done fairly well when they throw it to him. What I like to point out here on Devontae Adams is this is his week after week ranking, and the last 2 weeks obviously didn't make the top 30, didn't make the top 30 in week 15, week 14, but he was the number 1 receiver in week 13. So you're hoping that he bounces back. He's had a couple number 1 rankings, so you expect him to do fairly well. At number 5, you have Jamar Chase at New England. Jamar Chase, he had a touchdown. He was ranked 15. He had 60 yards. And, you just expect more for Joe Burrow-led offense. You expect more from Jamar Chase. I know he's coming back from injury, but we just got it. We should expect him to keep doing well. We expect bigger things from Jamar Chase. At number 6, you have A.J. Brown. You have A.J. Brown at Dallas. Now that whole team's doing really well. 181 receiving yards. He was ranked 4. He didn't get into the end zone. That's why he could have been a little higher. But look at that. 16 receptions, targets, 9 receptions. That's a lot for him. And if he's getting that type of usage, he's going to do really well. He's going to continue to do really well. At number 7, CeeDee Lamb versus Philadelphia. That Dallas team got shell-shocked with that loss. But here you go. 7 receptions on 7 targets, 126 receiving yards. He was ranked 13. He continues. Let's just look at him. He's getting some more yards compared to the 2 weeks prior. And his TDs is sporadic. But at CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, you expect him to do well. At number 8, DK Metcalf at Kansas City. DK, he hasn't been doing these long runs yet. After the catch, he hasn't been scoring, and so you expect more from this, huge stud wide receiver. You just expect him to do more. Let's look at his quarterback. You need more passing TDs than 1. 238 passing yards. You just expect more. DK Metcalf, he should do well. Let's just look at how he did. Okay, at number 9, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown at Carolina. Last week, he had 76 receiving yards. He was just outside the top 30. One of the things that I like doing these videos is that when I do these videos, sometimes I don't even know how these players did. So this is kind of like a reminder. When you want to go set your lineups, you want to see how they did, you want to see some stats, see if it kind of jogs of who you want to start. So that's what I try to do in these videos. So as we got Amon-Ra St. Brown, he did 76 receiving yards. That's okay, but we expected Goff to do much better than 252 passing yards and 1 touchdown. I don't think that's going to cut it, especially when Raymond is going to be your top receiver for the week. Got to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. At number 10, we got DeAndre Hopkins versus Tampa Bay. DeAndre Hopkins, he's had the targets and the receptions, didn't get many yards after that, didn't get a touchdown, but you still like where they're going, except, it's the quarterback. You got a new quarterback in there. What was he going to do? We didn't expect much, so I kind of don't really expect DeAndre Hopkins to be ranked so high. I think that's a little stretch. I'd like to see him ranked a little lower. At number 11, Mike Williams at Indianapolis. Now, Mike Williams last week, he was ranked 38, had 67 receiving yards, and my whole thing is Justin Herbert. 313 passing yards, but you need that to go with some touchdowns. That's not cutting it. And Keenan Allen, 86, no touchdowns. That's not gonna cut it. We expect more. At number 12, Jalen Waddle versus Green Bay. Jalen Waddle had 114 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. That's what we want. That's when we got to expect that. It just seems that Waddle's getting into the end zone way more than Tyreek Hill. Look at the yards. Even though it's a 1-2 punch, sometimes Waddle does better, but we still like that 1-2 punch in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So 12 is about where he is. Let's see, before we move on from Jalen Waddle, I like to just to see what his overall rankings have been. He was ranked 6. He was outside 12. So, he's out of the top 30 more often than he's in the top 30. But we still like what Waddle's done. I like to see him ranked a little lower just historically what he's done. Now, let's just continue to move on. At number 13, you have Chris Godwin at Arizona. Godwin got a touchdown. He was in the top 10, had 83 receiving yards. Looks like they're picking up. And if you just want to compare, Mike Evans had 10 targets. He had 8. I think there's just a little bit more chemistry with Tom Brady than Mike Evans, even though Mike Evans is a stud. I kind of like seeing Godwin at 13. At 14, Keenan Allen at Indianapolis. Now, to see 2 receivers within the top 15 seems like a stretch to me, especially the way Herbert's playing. So I think you got to pick one or the other. Is it Keenan Allen or is it Mike Williams? And if you put Mike Williams ahead, you got to push Keenan Allen lower. So I think that's a little stretch to put 2 of these receivers into the top 15. At number 16, Christian Watson at Miami. Now Green Bay's been warming up, even though Christian Watson didn't have a good game. Looks like Aaron Rodgers is starting to pick up the pace a little bit. 229 passing yards, 1 passing TD, but they're winning, and that's what you like about them. Now, if you come in here, Romeo Doubs, if you expect him to be your top receiver, but we're still going to pick Christian Watson ahead of him, I think it's a stretch. Because if you look at his week-over-week rankings, yeah, he's been in the top 10, week 10 through 13, but now 14, 15. So he's kind of trending down. So if you put him there, I like to see him ranked a little lower. At number 16, Terry McLaurin at San Francisco. Terry McLaurin had 70 receiving yards, 6 for 6 receptions versus targets, but he was outside of the top 35. And that's going to be an issue if you're expecting McLaurin to do well this week. I think it's just it's that Washington offense. He's made the top 10. I don't know. He's made the top 20 only a handful of times. So I think that's a stretch to put Terry McLaurin at 16. But that's where he stands. At number 17, Garrett Wilson versus Jacksonville. Garrett Wilson had a nice game. He had 98 receiving yards, 9 targets, and that's kind of the usage that you want to see. If you look, his kind of average about 75 yards, so you should expect 75 yards, but not a lot of touchdowns. So, I think that's the thing that you got to expect with the Jets. They got different quarterbacks coming in and out. I just don't know if you can depend on a Jets receiver to make that list every week in and week out. So Garrett Wilson, I think that's a stretch. Number 18, T. Higgins at New England. Higgins, I think everybody expects Higgins to do better than that. He had a receiving touchdown, 33 yards, but 33 yards, it's not cutting it. You've got to get more from Higgins. And I think he's been trending down in points lately. A couple didn't play last week. The week before he played. You're not getting as much as you need more from Higgins if you're going to win. But it's hard. It's Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. These are players that have been playing well. At number 19, Devontae Smith at Dallas. Now Philadelphia is just one hot team, so I'd like to see Devontae Smith ranked higher just because of how hot that team is. But I think there might be some Jalen Hurts may not play. And if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, then I think Devontae Smith is going to have a bad game, obviously, when you have your MVP candidate coming out there. But if you look, Devontae Adams was the leading receiver in week 3. cracked the top 10 one other time. And if you look at crack the top, it's just don't know what to expect, especially with Jalen Hurts. I'd put Devontae Smith a little lower. At number 20, you got Mike Evans at Arizona. Again, we're putting these players in these top positions because of how they've done. 83 receiving yards. I think you're going to expect him to be, I don't know, top 25. But I don't know if you're going to put him here at 20 or less. At 21, you got Christian Kirk at the New York Jets. Now, this whole Jacksonville offense did awesome in Week 15, but you got Zay Jones had a standout game. You got Christian Kirk. Have no problem seeing here in the top 30, like where he stands. But look at this. If you look at Trevor Lawrence, 318 passing yards, 4 passing TDs, and I kind of like, and they're playing the Jets, so I like him in that position. At 22, Chris Olave at Cleveland. Chris Olave had 53 receiving yards, but if you're thinking about starting him, here's where it gets interesting. How is he trending? He had a couple standout games, but if you're looking, I think this next game it's gonna do even better. So I like Olave here. I would actually, even though he hasn't been playing well, I expect him to do a little bit better than at ranked 22. At number 23, Amari Cooper, home versus the New Orleans Saints. Now, Amari Cooper, he's got Watson back. So the question is how has Watson performed? So this is Deshaun Watson in Week 15. This is Deshaun Watson in Week 14. And this is Deshaun Watson in Week 13. So can you count on Watson to do well? You're going to need that if you're going to put Amari Cooper ahead of Donovan People-Jones. So that could be a high-class problem, but it's Watson. He's warming back up. So at 24, you have Brandon Ayuk, home versus Washington. Now, Purdy has been doing fairly well. He's getting in the end zone. He's getting some yards, and I think that's going to help. But the question here is 19 yards is not going to cut it for Ayuk. If you look at where the ball's going, we expected Christian McCaffrey to do fairly well. He's getting the usage. I think it's going to be tough for Ayuk to succeed, but they are playing Washington. So I think this is fair where he's at. At number 25, Michael Pittman versus the Chargers. Now, he had 60 receiving yards, 10 receptions on 14 targets. But if you're thinking about starting him, he's going to be ranked 27. But how has he done over the past season? 27, 110, 78. These are all rankings for that. So if you're expecting much, I wouldn't expect much from Michael Pittman. I think he's already peaked, and he's barely staying in the top 30. I think it's a stretch to put him at 25. At number 26, Jerry Jeudy at the Rams. Now Jeudy, Jeudy can do well. He's still coming off that high when he had 3 touchdowns in Week 14. But we're talking about last week, and I just, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson's going to start. So I still think that Jerry Jeudy, it's a stretch to put him in the top 30. He just hasn't been doing well. And if you're going to start him, I think you're going to expect about 75 yards and no touchdowns. At number 27, you got Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Jerry Jeudy and Juju Smith-Schuster are kind of like the same players this season. They can do really well, have outstanding games, but they're just not consistent. And for whatever reason, you just can't count on him this season. But he was ranked 37. He was outside the top 30 last week. He had 88 receiving yards. Just they're going against Seattle. I'm just not sure that Judy's going to do well again. At number 28, DJ Moore, home versus Detroit. DJ Moore was ranked 11th. And look at the quarterback, Sam Darnold. So if you're counting on Sam Darnold, he had 225 passing yards, 1 touchdown. The top receiver was DJ Moore. You know, I think you're going to get about the same. It's just, can you count on it? But we're not asking for much. We're asking that he's just inside the top 30, kind of like where he stands. He's a stud. At 29, Gabe Davis at Chicago. Now, if you watch that Buffalo game, Gabe Davis, he had maybe two good plays and to get that 56 pass receiving yards. But you know, Gabe Davis, he can get lost. You got McKenzie, you got Knox who's stepping up. So again, if you look at Gabe Davis, he's only been in the top 30 3 times. So I don't expect him to make the top 30 versus Chicago. Well, I expect him to be inside. I mistake that. And coming in at 30 is Zay Jones at the New York Jets. I guess here's a guy that was the #1 receiver in week 15. Now all of a sudden he's going to make the top 30. You're just going on in past seasons, because if you look at what he did all season, he's steady, but all of a sudden you have this explosion. So you know, we're just going off of the week 15 rankings. So you got to roll with them. It's just, can they do it? But look, it's the New York Jets, and that is the rankings for our players this week. And you know, by looking at these rankings, you're always somebody's not gonna make the rankings, no matter how you look at it. Somebody's not gonna make the rankings. And if you look at somebody who's not going to make the rankings, that's the assessment that we're trying to figure out. Who's not going to make it? But if you're still playing it, you're doing well, you're having fun, you're getting close to the championship game. So good luck for you. But as always, don't forget, you can like and subscribe to our channel. We're going to constantly be trying to improve our stat machine to make it better. If you got any suggestions, if you got any you want to compare players, put it in the comment section. We'll try to get a video out this week. All right, thanks for watching. See you again next week. Those fantasy good fellas.